Hey you guys, we've got a training game going with Flamin-ingo. It's rated 677. We just played one game that I cancelled the recording because my dogs went insane when my wife got back from the shop, and then she stuck her head around the door. Now, which was fun because I blundered my queen and my opponent spotted the mistake and captured my queen, but later on he then lost his queen, and I was able to checkmate him. So we know what we're doing. So my opponent's 677, so he's 1,000 points below me, and what you need to be focusing on when you are sub 750, sub 1,000, is particularly simply not blundering. It's the one move blunders. That's what you need to fix, and that's what the checklist will help you to do. So for Flamin-ingo, it's the sanity check. And the good thing about playing a 15 plus 10 is that you've got the time to do the sanity check on every move. So before you drop the piece, make sure it's protected. So I could push d3 now and then maybe go for a fried liver kind of attack. This is the Gioco Piano, so this is the Italian game. And when black brings out his bishop to the same position, this is the Gioco Piano. And I think I'm just going to play with a straight bat. I'm going to develop my pieces, not going to try and do anything clever. All right, now knight f6, he's looking at this pawn, it's defended. I can castle, so can he. We've got a very symmetrical position on the board. I'm going to push d3. Prepare to get out my last minor piece, the castle, and then we are playing chess. Right, he's gone to castle. I will do the same. Also, another option is bishop e3. Then if he trades, I recapture with my f-pawn, and I get a central pawn advantage. And now he played that very, very quickly. Very quickly, 1 second. Don't do that. Don't do that when you're playing 15 plus 10. Right? 1 second is not enough time to gather what just changed on the board. Right? He's actually just played the exact same move as me. So if I take and he takes, this is weird. This is just weird. Right, I'm dropping back. Now he should probably do this. Okay, so he's gone for the trade. Now this is instructive. I've dropped back so that if bishop takes bishop, so if I have a light square trade, I recapture with the a pawn towards the center. That gives me an extra pawn, which means that if at some point I push the c pawn and it gets taken off, I have a spare pawn that can move towards the center again. Now what my opponent's done here is allowed me here to capture again towards the center. So if he does this as well, that would be a mistake. It would be inaccurate, probably, according to the machine. So I have some alcohol-free Hoegaarden wheat beer. Cheers, it's been a good day already. I refereed a under 14 rugby match this morning, which ended 64-0. Right, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to make my moves in 1 second flat. I'm going to use the checklist. I'm going to say, right, is my king safe? Yep. It is for now. The queen can't come to here or here, which is good. And that's always an advantage of having your king's knight on f3. All good. Now, why did my opponent make that move? Well, he's having a scratch at my favourite pawn. So we do not wish to allow that, do we, precious? So I've got a couple of ideas. Queen d2, queen e2. Both good. I want to leave my rook here. I don't want to play rook e1. That's out. Because I want my rook on the semi-open file. That's half the reason why I wanted to put that pawn there. So queen here, queen here. I have a light squared bishop, I don't have a dark squared bishop. I'm going to put my queen on the dark square. That's all the logic that's going into that idea. I may then kick the knight. Sometimes kicking the knight and weakening your pawns is a bad thing. Here I'm not so sure because it guards the g4 square. Remember, my opponent only has a light squared bishop. And I'm happy to keep this tension. A lot of beginners, now I think this is something that, it's not really a kind of a beginner versus intermediate versus advanced thing. It's just as you go on, as you climb, you find that people are more comfortable with tension between pieces. So tension is when you've got pieces looking at each other, you know, the guns pointing at each other, and you leave it. Beginners hate tension. They want to simplify all the time. So, I've now completed development. This is move 10. My queen's come off the back rank. Alright, so, yeah, we were talking about the kick idea. I definitely don't want to capture his bishop. I don't want to open up his rook. There's no benefit to me in that. See, if he at any point wants to play pawn to f5 with a pawn break, I can capture with my spare e-pawn. I've got Eddie 1 and Eddie 2 now. And he blinked. I think he blinked here. Now I get to capture there if I want. Otherwise, you see, he can capture towards the centre and then, I don't know, maybe would I recapture my knight? I don't know. So this is this was my f-pawn. Or one of them was my f-pawn. So then I'm capturing towards the outside. Doesn't actually really benefit me, does it? What does benefit me is the fact that my opponent did not check all the consequences of his pawn move. So can you see a one move tactic now for white? Okay, every time you move a pawn, you have to say, well, what squares is that pawn controlling right now? If there is a piece on one of those squares, what piece is his pawn defending right now? And suddenly he's moved f5 very early on and blundered a bishop, actually. So I wonder if he's seen it. Okay. See, if I take the pawn now, he could play bishop takes. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the pawn and give him an opportunity to resolve this. Oh, no. Oh, he can't play bishop takes, can he? He can't play bishop takes. Okay, but he's got that, so some compensation. Alright, now he can take the pawn with a rook if he wants, and material is equal again, so no harm, no foul. That's a move at some point. That's a move, or that's a move. What I like here is I've got this now bunch of 5 in the middle of the board. My opponent also has 5 pawns on the queen side and centre. I've got a mobile rook, which is no bad thing. I could play rook a4 right now and attack the knight. And if I attack the knight, then I check, well, where can the knight go? He can't go there, he can't go there because it'll get taken, can't go there, can't go there because it'll get taken. So he's going to retreat, and that knight retreating is good for me. So I'm going to play rook a4. Plus now I have a rook on an open rank, which gives me actually quite a lot of control. See here, this rook was controlling the back rank, which is also controlled by his buddy, right? But now I'm controlling 4th rank, which is quite good. And previously I was controlling the A file, and the A file really isn't very significant right now. Ideas now include e4, hit the rook. The knight has just blocked the retreat of the rook. Okay, so that's something I notice. So what I'm going to do now is think, well, is it possible to trap the rook? If I push this now, the rook's under attack by the pawn there and by the queen there. So, but he can go to h5. So maybe I should be swinging my knight around. I'm going to swing my knight around. I'm going to swing my knight around to here. And then think about that. And that could trap the rook. So what my opponent should be thinking at this point in time is, well, where's that knight off to? What's his game? What's he up to? Now, this is also a blunder. 13 seconds, because I have now e4. Any time you think about putting pieces 2 squares apart in line, horizontally, you have to say to yourself, is there the danger of a pawn fork? Now, also, by the way, because that knight is now moved, the rook has now a retreat. So maybe that's what he was thinking, but what he missed was this. Ah, this is good. Okay, so he's getting out of the fork with a counter-attack against a piece of equal value. And that is really good. However, if I take his rook, he takes my rook, I get his knight, I still win. I still actually win the knight. And that's good. That's good for me. Plus, I've actually undoubled my pawns here, which is not particularly important. So now I'm actually up a whole knight. I have 2 knights. My opponent has 1 knight. This pawn is currently endangered. So what I would like to do is probably move this knight somewhere, and with a discovered defense by the rook on that pawn. I don't want to be pushing g4 at this point. Don't see any point in that. I could also move this knight here and defend the pawn that way. That's quite a good idea. I like that. I like that. That's where the knight was going to go anyway. Right, that was the idea. So this knight's been on quite a journey already. I'm going on an adventure. So I've 1 attacker on there, it's defended once. So this knight now, so one thing to tell yourself, you should be analysing the board on every time it's your opponent's turn. Every time your opponent is thinking, then just go through and say, okay, this is what I do. This is what's undefended. I'm looking at what's defended. That is the only really undefended thing. But this pawn is only defended by the knight. And it's under attack. And what that means is that this knight can't really move. Because if the knight moves, I can capture the pawn. So be telling yourself those things between moves, so that you are just ready. You're just layering up the story of the board. What's going on the board? What is the board telling you? Now it's a slightly tough position now for my opponent because he's down a whole piece. So what I would like to do is I'd like to trade one of my knights for his knight. I'd like to trade down, leave myself with the material advantage towards the end. He's going to have his work cut out now. So yeah, refereed a rugby match. I've come back, I've fixed the my chicken house, or 2 chicken houses actually today, so hopefully we'll have more robust chicken protection. Getting the queen off the back rank, that's a good thing. Also preparing to, opening up the back rank for the rook, also a good thing. So that was a decent move. My knight's defending this. This is now defended twice. Maybe that's what he's thinking. I've got rook e1, that's an idea. I'd also like to prevent this knight from coming in, so I'm also thinking about the c3 move as well. c3, maybe even b4. I'm going to play c3. there's another aspect as you improve, Flamin-ingo. Now that wasn't brilliant, because what he's done now is he's actually just shut off the rook. I now have one attacker on there. That's undefended. So now I'm inclined to move my rook across. But then I need to say, well, what happens if he pushes? Then we can trade off. That's okay. That's absolutely fine. Now, so always ask the what if. If I... What did I... Okay. Alright, so now he's defending the board again. That's still undefended. Can I attack it? Not easily, no. Not easily. Okay, I'm going to push b4. Just a useful move. Just gaining some space up the board. Now, what he's just done here, it looks like he's kind of backing up this pawn, which he is, but he's actually pinned his own pawn here. And that could be important. So, for example, I play knight here, and he thinks, you muppet, you just blundered. But no, because this rook here is undefended. So let's play that for sake of illustration. I now have the most glorious knights on 6th are evil and horrible. Knights prefer to be on the 5th and the 6th rank. They are at their most lethal when they are here. Rooks like to be on the 7th. Rooks are really, really effective there. Bishops can be super effective from miles away. So I hope now he's figuring out, oh, he can't grab the knight because he's taken 20 odd seconds. So that's a good sign. Okay. Oh, interesting. Now he can grab the knight, right? No, he can't. No, he still can't grab it. He has just pinned the knight. That's interesting because the king would be in check if the knight moves, right? So I'm going to move my king. Again, he still can't take the knight because he still falls for this, which is actually checkmate as well. So you know where you can't take that knight. You can't take it, mate. It's no. I know you want to. Oh, hello. Right, now it's not checkmate anymore because the king has this. That's worth pointing out. Now, why did he play that move? He still loses a rook, so he still can't take the knight. I'm tempted to play that. I really am. I'm also thinking about queen g5 as well. That's just a nice move. Lines up the queen with the king. Threatening f6, and the pawn's pinned, it can't move. That's all very nice. I still don't have to worry about this too much, but I could always put my knight in. Okay, I'm going to play my queen here now, then maybe with the idea of knight e6, with an instant checkmate threat. And now, all the Spidey... Oh, hang on! How long's that knight been defending that rook? Did I blunder? Right. Good. This is instructive. Now, when the knight moved, I noticed now the king has an escape square. I missed something. I missed that the knight now defends the rook. And if the knight defends the rook, then rook takes rook is equal and not better. Therefore, he can take the knight. Right, now, interesting. So now I've actually lost my material advantage. Also, I have to be aware that that's actually mate in 2. Knight can block, but then it's lost. So I'm going to do this, which at least forces back his knight. Now, we have tension in the pawns here. And it's game on. I have knight here, which means that his knight must stay to defend that. I also have the threat of knight here if his knight moves. But also I've got to consider this, and how dangerous is that? Or should I push? If I push, it drops this pawn. So my question now is, and this is a very, very common thing. I'm just looking at this idea as well. I'm going to play that. Okay, it pins the knight, and I'm threatening this with check. That's a nice little move. So yeah, another thing, I don't know if it's on the checklist, it should be on the checklist, is to say, is my priority right now attacking or defending? Now, sometimes attack is the best form of defense, right? If you can counterattack, then it can count as a defense. If you can check your opponent, then it means that your opponent can't capture or whatever, or continue with his own plan. Okay, that's a very decent move. That's a very decent move. So the queen now defends the knight. The queen's also now attacking this pawn. If I capture here, queen c1 is mate in 2. So that was excellent. Now, I do have this idea. I'm expecting queen can't take there because then I take the knight, you see, and the knight can't move because the knight is pinned in an absolute pin, which would put him in check. Okay. Wow. More good moves coming. If I take there, king takes. That doesn't work. I'm going to give my king an escape square. I think that's just generally useful. But Flamin-ingo is playing well. Okay, he's grabbed a pawn. He's grabbed a pawn because the king now defends the knight. The knight is still technically pinned. Now I can grab this. That pawn is defended technically by the knight. If he takes this, I've got a check as well. This is very sharp now, and it's equal position. My opponent has worked his way back into the game extremely well. Now, what we do is what we always do, which is chill. Relax. Don't panic. Never panic. I have a check. Now you have to say, well, does the check have any purpose at all? If I check him, he can block with a knight, or he can move the king away. If he blocks with the knight, I get this pawn. So I'm going to do the check. Also have knight to here, hitting the queen. Again, threatening to come into a nice position. That's a decent move, you know. I'm looking at the knight thinking, that knight is not great where it is. But there, defended by a pawn, could be really good. Also attacks this pawn as well as the king, so... Having said that, the king is likely to move on the next turn. There we go. Now, the king did not move. The knight's just pinned itself. Anytime you block a check with a piece, you pin the piece. Now I can take this pawn, and then I'm actually threatening the knight. The queen can't defend it, because that's black's own pawn. So I'm going to take here. I'm not too scared. That's a check. But now you're kind of out of checks. But now that's just dropped the knight. 1.1, right, Flamin-ingo, listen to me, stop it, stop, you've got 11 minutes, 11 and a half minutes on the clock, don't drop pieces, that was a blunder. And now the king's in check, and now you're in some trouble, okay, because I have a check here, and the king I think has to go back. Yeah, well, he's saying good game into the chat, but mate, well, it's not actually over. It is not over. I can keep checking, but then he can keep going there. Alright. Okay, so what I do now is I push f6. Again, his queen has no good checks, because it just gets captured there. Now, if pawn takes, I've got queen takes with check. King has to go there or there. He says, I missed my only chance with queen takes h5. Oh! Oh! I didn't even see that. Well done. Okay, here. Well spotted. I missed it too. Now, I have there, which is a check. King can't go there, 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 there. King will be forced here. And I'm saving my knight. But I can also just check with the queen. Which is better? If knight here, I've got 4.5 minutes on the clock. I'm not rushing. I am not rushing, mate. There, queen's covering all of that. He's in check, so he's got to go here, right? So if knight here, king goes there. If queen here, king goes there or there. I'm going to play the queen one. d3. He's saying, I wish I'd spotted that before I played d3. 1.1 seconds. .1 seconds to play d3. Right then. Right then. Okay, I can sweep up some pawns here. With a check here, and the king has to come onto the 7th. Now this pawn is still a major threat. So if I do something like exchange queens, this pawn converts and he wins. So it's by no means finished. That means what I have to do... Alright, you've only got a choice of 2 moves, mate, so... Sanity checking wasn't there. I know. I know. You've got to sanity check. We've had this conversation. That was another 1 second move. What I want to do now is I want to keep the checks coming. I don't want to give my opponent a chance to promote, to push that pawn forward. I would like his king to step within range of my knight, which means, like, for example, one of these squares. Or this square. Okay, so now, can I sweep up pawns and with checks? That's an idea. That now? Potentially, but... Okay, now he's in range of my knight, so now I have this. And now I have this. Hitting 2 pawns with check. I think he's forced there, isn't he? And then I have that. You've only got 1 move, so I'm going to move here. And defended by the knight. Oh, those Russians. Now I can't go here because queen takes. That's actually a losing. That would be a losing move. I've got check. King goes there, or queen sacks herself off. There, check. I think queen has to sack now. Yeah. Wow, fascinating. But he worked that out pretty quickly, eh? Now, And rule number 1. Always don't panic. Now, queen here, and I'm guarding the promotion square. Now this is actually a very, very instructive thing. Here, I'm going to force the king behind the pawn. My opponent has pawns that can move. That's actually a bad thing for him. Because now what I can do is I can move my king across. But what I want to do is I want to move my king adjacent to this pawn so that I can capture the pawn, defended by the king. And now I give check. And now he has to go, okay, well, that's just losing because now I've grabbed the pawn, you see. And king e is stuck in these two squares. So the only thing that can happen is that my pawns romp home to victory. So I'm going to push. Okay, well, that's just queen. Check him. And that's mate. Excellent, good game. Good one. Right. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go back to the start of the game, we're going to play it through again, and I'm going to highlight what a sub 700 player, but which by the way, bloody good game for somebody rated under 1,000, never mind under 700. Okay, the Italian, the Gioco Piano. Now there are tricks and traps and fun and games that you can have here, but we didn't do that, we wanted to develop, and he's developed excellent, and I push d3, and he castles excellent castles. d6. Do we have a completely symmetrical position? We do. Bishop out here. Bishop to here. I drop back. Now, first inaccuracy, I think, to take that. Allow my pawn to capture centrally. Knight in. Yeah, I mean, it's a tactical idea, but it's a kind of a one-move, one-dimensional idea. Because what this does is it prompts me to do something I wanted to do anyway, which is to get Queenie off the back rank. And now he's moved his knight into an enemy territory. And yeah, it's defended by the bishop, but I could take out the bishop at any time. And this was a blunder, right? He took a minute 33 over this move, and at this point I could simply have grabbed his bishop. As it happens, I didn't, and now material is equal. I lift my rook to the 4th rank, which is all good, and we have knight. And now I'm repositioning, I'm going to maneuver my knight round to here. It's always very comfortable in defensively to have both knights in front of your king like this. There are a few ways to do it. And also these knights can potentially jump in with attacking ideas as well. So particularly if your opponent's king is castled on the same side, even better. Knight now comes in and now he walks into, what was this? 13 seconds. He walks into a pawn fork. And I'm not letting him off this time. Okay, counter-attack, but it still loses a piece. And then I continue my knight round. Queen comes out. Knight's now starting to maneuver itself around. Temporarily blocks off the rook. I attack this, and now he comes here to defend this pawn. Pushy push. And now it's time for my blunder. This is a good move. That was a bloody good move. Pin the knight. Now I'm not worried at this point because I notice that the rook is undefended, which means this pawn is effectively pinned. I move my king and break the pin, break this pin, knowing that this pawn is actually still pinned and can't take the knight. Then he plays this, and what I saw was, now the king has a hole to escape out of. What I missed was, and now the knight is defending the rook. Therefore, this pawn is not pinned and can happily take the knight because this is an equal trade, and he wins a piece. And Muggins here misses it and decides to go in for the kill, and there we go. So now I've given up my advantage, I've given it back, my material advantage is out the window. These pawns look bad, but in fact, this is a real threat. So, I come in and pin the knight. Attacking, potentially attacking as well. He plays queen across, which is, again, a very, very good move. Very, very well found. Also attacking this. So my knight now comes in and he moves his king. And again, this is what I missed. I missed the king now defends the knight. That means the knight is still technically pinned, but the queen is not bound to defend it anymore. So I push a pawn. Queen can take that, because I can't take the knight now. But he does drop another pawn. He gets that one. Now he's actually a pawn up. And now it's time to start giving checks, because I need the initiative. Right? I really want to sweep up a few pawns if I can, and then try and trade off the material and try and gain a winning advantage. Knight comes out here, and pawn's undefended. Now the knight's under attack. So yes, the knight was moving from a square where it was protected once to another square where it was technically protected. I don't know if that was the best move, but it drops the pawn. And now the knight is under attack and undefended. He gives a check, but again, this is the only check. The queen has checked there on a light square. King's moved on to a dark square. So the only opportunities for checks now are here, which loses the queen, or these dark squares, and she can't get to any of those dark squares because she's on the wrong complex. And now the knight's under attack. Super blunder, 1.1 second, thinking that's not long enough to think. Drop your knight. And now we come in. Now this king actually, does ends up going on quite a little journey himself, doesn't he? And I'm sweeping up pawns. I keep giving checks, right? And the king is getting forced over here and forced over there. And now there's only two legal moves. The queen is guarding these. The king's guarding that. The pawn's also guarding that. So, and he can't go here because of the king either. So now the only two options are king there, and if king here, queen here, is checkmate. So the only option was for the queen to sack herself off. Now, still very losable position. So I give a check here, and now I know this pattern. This is an endgame pattern that you need to know. Forget about these pawns. In fact, you can even forget about my opponent's pawns as well. The thing here is that you have to give checks until the king goes behind the pawn. When the king goes behind the pawn, your king can come in. Right? So he comes here, and now this was simply a mistake. He had to go behind the pawn again, but he loses a pawn. There's no stalemating ideas because these pawns are both mobile. And so, that pawn move just accelerated the end and mate. Simple as, but for 6-7-7, that was a damn good game. Andy finished with 13 minutes 27 on the clock. I suspect he wishes that he'd used a few more of those seconds to think about a couple of the moves, but I think that was a very, very good game. I think it was very instructive. Hope it was useful for everyone else watching. Thanks for your time. Do appreciate it. Please subscribe to Chess Boot Camp if you haven't subscribed, and I'll see you soon.